African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim, and the African Petroleum Producers Organisation, APPO, have made history by signing the Establishment Agreement and the Charter for the African Energy Bank, AEB. The signing ceremony took place at Egypt's Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources. So we want to look at the inception and what role will the African Energy Bank play in Africa. The idea of the AEB was conceived and incubated in Cairo when Molla Tarek El Molla, the Egyptian Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, hosted the two institutions in December of 2020. It is envisaged that each African member country will contribute a minimum of $83 million for a total of $1.5 billion, while the Afreximbank and APPO, which are founding members of the AEB, are expected to match the balance. The outstanding $2 billion will potentially be sourced from other investors, including Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds. Afreximbank has emerged as a leader in hydrocarbon project funding recently, and it is said to have caused some issues among its shareholders. There is a lot of pressure on it from other investors in the bank who do not share the vision, as financiers of Afreximbank are not just Africans or people who share its vision. Africa should now shift away from exporting oil and gas to wealthy European nations and elsewhere toward domestic use. Many African producers like Nigeria, Angola, and Ghana export their oil and import refined products, hitting foreign exchange, slowing industrialization, and leaving them vulnerable to price volatility. Africa exports 75% of its oil and 45% of its gas. Not because the continent does not need it, but because it gets big money selling it internationally. The point here is, give the people access to energy and they will transform the economy. Exporting hasn't worked and it will not work. The president and the chairman of the board of directors at Afreximbank and Omar Farouk Ibrahim, the secretary general of APPO, signed the establishment agreement and the charter on behalf of their respective institutions. The eagerly anticipated African Energy Bank is expected to launch by June 30th after selecting a host nation, and hopes to raise an initial $5 billion from African signatories, international financiers, and Middle Eastern states. Talking about the role the African Energy Bank is going to play in Africa, the whole idea of establishing the African Energy Bank stems from the realization that those on whom Africa has been depending on for the past 70 to 100 years for finance to explore, process, and produce their oil and gas have basically been the West. And they have now decided, as a result of the global paradigm shift toward renewables, to stop funding fossil fuels, especially in Africa. The African Energy Bank is Africa's response to the imminent funding challenge posed by the global paradigm shift away from fossil fuels toward renewable energy, euphemistically called the energy transition. For so long, the African oil and gas industries has depended on the extra African funding. However, the advent of the energy transition has made us to realize that those on whom we have depended on for many years are now withdrawing their support. Several analysts have argued that Africa cannot abandon its oil and gas sector immediately, especially considering that a significant amount of its population lacks access to energy. The AEB's primary objective is to address the imminent void created by the withdrawal of funding for oil and gas projects in Africa by the traditional financiers. With over 125 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserves and over 600 trillion cubic feet of proven gas reserves, it does not make sense for Africa to abandon these energy sources when it has the largest proportion of the world's population living without access to modern energy.